I'm John Lasseter. I co-wrote the original story and directed the film Toy Story.
I'm Ralph Guggenheim.
I'm Bonnie Arnold.
And Bonnie and I produced Toy Story.
And I'm Andrew Stanton. I'm one of the screenwriters and storyboard artists for the film.
My name's Pete Doctor. I worked on the story and was supervising animator.
My name is Ralph Eggleston. I was the art director on Toy Story.
And I'm Bill Reeves, supervising technical director on Toy Story.
And we're here to give you an audio commentary for the wonderful Toy Story. When we started this whole idea, it seemed to be very doable in the sense that computer graphics tends to make things look kind of plasticky anyway, so we might as well do a story about toys. And you and I, Bill, we did Tin Toy, that short film, which kind of introduced the whole notion of these toys being alive and stuff.
So the first time we see Woody is a classic Western introduction.
We wanted to have it sort of a child's version of a Western movie. And as he starts playing, it gets into the sort of kid-like non sequitur sort of thing.
The kid's logic. I mean, in a weird way, it's logical for the kid, but you know,
right.
That's what was true about the playtime.
The force field, and then
the dinosaurs and.
Here's an interesting thing. So many people come up to us and they didn't know that Molly was in the same room with Andy. It's like the crib's in there all the time.
Right.
But people never really, I guess we just didn't sell it enough that, you know, Molly shares the room with him. People thought Bo Peep was Andy's toy.
And then we have this, amazing opening song by Randy Newman, who did the songs and the score.
Yeah.
Right.
I still remember the first time that we sat down and listened to Randy sing this song just on the piano.
Yeah.
And we had talked about the emotions. We had talked about some of the feelings we wanted in the song.
The things we likened it to were Harold and Maude and The Graduate, where songs actually told about an emotional moment in the film rather than the character singing about those things. It just made this seem more contemporary and more realistic, and I think that's what John was trying to go for.
Right. In a short amount of time, we needed to show that Andy and Woody had this lifelong bond, but we don't have the whole movie to do that. We want to disrupt that as soon as we can, and it was great. From the minute we heard Randy's song, we knew this did it. This made you feel like these guys were inseparable.
I think it did even more than that. It really defined so much of the theme of the whole movie for us.
And we used this song at the end, over the end credits. In the beginning, it's about Andy's relationship with Woody, and at the end, it's Woody's relationship with Buzz.
Right.
When Ralph and your crew, you designed all of these sets. I mean, this world is a really three-dimensional world. It's something different than cell animation. I mean, these are truly dimensional sets.
And the living room was the first thing I think we really got into. And, there's so much detail there you never really get a close look at.
I remember you said that you wanted to give a sense of history to this world, so that when people looked at it, it looks like people have lived in these houses. Bill, you would get all of these designs. They're more or less like blueprints, you know?
Yeah, you'd get this packet of information, we called it, which was a specification of what these things, objects really look like. It was as if we had to build them out of wood or clay or plastic or whatever.
And now Woody comes to life for the first time.
Slow truck in.
Directed by John Lasseter.
And my credit's the longest one on the movie. It's one frame longer than yours.
That was in
The
the contract.
first line that Woody should say, we went through so many revisions.
So many.
We have pages and pages of Woody's first line.
Just
know.
about as many pages as we
There's
have
a lot of
titles.
pressure on your main character. What's the first thing he says?
Right, he should have an edge, but not too edgy, because, it's for kids, too.
Ages 3 and up. It's on my box. Ages 3 and up. I'm not supposed to be baby.
In casting the toys, we really looked at sort of what kind of personality we wanted them to have. And a lot of it was drawn out of the type of toy it was. And Mr. Potato Head's a classic example, because one of the characteristics of the toy is that it's constantly losing its parts, and we thought it would definitely have a chip on its shoulder. Don Rickles was the first actor that we thought for this.
The only choice we had.
The only choice, yeah, he was great. The definitive Army man is the drill sergeant in Full Metal Jacket, and so we casted him.
Now, Slinky is the last character to finally be cast. We actually remodeled him because of Jim Varney's voice.
Right.
Well, I think Jim brought the hound dog sort of quality to it, but he was a person and had that sort of kind of voice that's just sort of a more, I guess, cartoony, for lack of a better word, without sort of putting on a voice.
Well, one of the things about Etch-a-Sketch is in bringing these toys alive, we thought, everybody draws on an Etch-a-Sketch so badly.
Yeah.
We wanted to have Etch-a-Sketch, if he was alive, be able to do cross-hatching in absolutely exquisite circles.
Well, he would naturally be the best at it.
Yeah.
Jurassic Park had just come out when we were designing Rex, and we decided, wouldn't it be great to have a slant on T-Rex and have him be insecure?
Well, first of all, so like the coolest dinosaur there is a T-Rex. So we had to have a T-Rex.
Right.
And then we played him against type, to make him neurotic.
The most neurotic carnivore ever to walk the earth.
Right,
That's
having
right.
these vestigial arms and not being able to touch
Well,
his own
they are
nose.
pathetic.
Yeah.
They're like the most pathetic things. He's the most fearsome creature to walk the earth, but he can't even scratch his own nose.
Mm-hmm.
In designing the characters, we really studied real toys. Remember that? We would go to Toys R Us all the time?
Oh,
I think I was in heaven.
Yeah,
Remember we went to Toys R Us and bought toys with a company credit card during work hours?
collected toys, and
Yeah.
of course everybody had their own that they would bring in.
Right. This kind of brings up the point that we wanted to to mix toys that we made up along with existing toys that were out there. And we kept giving Ralph a list of, hey, Ralph, let's get Little Tykes.
Right.
Hey, Ralph, let's get Tinker Toys.
Boy, the
And,
hours I spent on the phone with Mr. Potato Head's lawyer, huh?
Yeah,
Just trying to work out the use of Mr. Potato Head in our movie.
it's true. We got to have them.
But it's funny, we only picked existing toys that have stood the test of time, that have already gone through 1 or 2 generations, that hopefully would still be around even if this movie's watched 10, 20 years from now.
Right. In fact, a Slinky Dog was the only toy that we used that wasn't currently in production.
Any toys left behind? A moving buddy. You don't have
The books behind Woody are all the old Pixar films.
I'm sure that's where the most pauses are going to happen on this to read the bindings on those books.
Oh, the other thing to look at is in a lot of scenes we have funny little sayings across Mr. Spell's readout. It's his dialogue.
The staff meeting.
Well, we thought in analyzing toys and the purpose of toys, they are manufactured to be played with by a child, but they could look at being played with by a child as their job. And so if they all look at this as a job, this is their workplace when Andy leaves the room.
Right.
And so naturally, every workplace, you have staff meetings.
This is the scene that we probably storyboarded and re-storyboarded and wrote and rewrote more often than any other
A
scene in the movie.
zillion times.
Kissing his butt right there was the definitive joke for the movie.
Right. It's really funny, actually, to watch audiences' faces when they see that. It's all of a sudden, did I see what I just saw?
Right.
This is a Disney movie, and he's...
And it kind of set the tone for the rest of the
Right.
movie. It said,
There's
we
some-
are irreverent, get ready for irreverence.
Yeah,
does,
and because there was a real attention to the adult audience and the teenage audience in Toy Story. We really wanted to make this for kids, but also make it so that the adults would enjoy it as well. There's one of the animators, Doug Sweetland, worked on the scenes that where Woody gets run over by all the toys, and he worked on them for such a long period of time that he actually had, when he finished that one scene, he had a rap party.
He had his own rap party for
He
that
had his
one
own
shot.
rap party for the
one
one
shot in the
scene.
movie.
It was good chocolate cake that he'd made by himself.
Ham the piggy bank, we thought of as being a Mr. Know-It-All, because he sits up on the shelf and he stares out the window all day, and he knows more than the rest of the toys. And so he cast John Ratzenberger, who played Cliff the Mailman from Cheers. And this guy came in, and he was so amazing at ad-libs, because really the character of Ham was just one-liners all the time. So for every line he had, he gave us 10 hilarious alternatives, and he just kept ad-libbing. In fact, we just ran the tape and let him come up with...
Keep going.
Keep going.
You know what to do. Yes.
And now comes
see
probably
that?
everybody's favorite sequence.
Well, this is, of course, the very first sequence that we boarded and that we animated.
Right.
That's right. And it got shown around quite a bit. And it also really epitomized the essence of the story. When these soldiers start walking, you know a lot about the world of toys that's going to be created in this movie.
And I think there's not one guy out there that does not relate to these little green army men. I haven't met one yet.
In analyzing the Green Army Men, we realized there were 3 basic things that we had to have in the model. One, they're badly molded, so that they had all that extra plastic, the mold flashing that was sticking out of their heads. Their gun barrels are always bent, and their feet are always attached to those bases. And when the paratroopers go off, I mean, because I love those. And they had to have them hooked with a big ring on their head. I love that.
But we were always. I remember the first few times we showed it to audiences, we were always surprised because we always thought the paratroopers going off the edge of the balcony was sort of a big dramatic moment in the scene, and instead it always gets a huge laugh.
Huge laugh. Yeah.
Out what is in those presents.
We had to have them freeze in their classic Army Man poses. It was a must. Green Army Men, when their feet are attached to the bases, that's how they walk. And so we thought of when she actually steps on one of the guys, his base breaks off, and that's why he can't walk. But it's one of those definitive scenes that you have in all Army pictures is the injured soldier saying, go on without me.
Right, you had to put that in.
You had to put that in. And the Sarge, I mean, one of the themes of this is teamwork, is working together. And so it kind of reinforced the theme of the whole movie for him to say, no, you never leave it.
Never leaves a man behind.
Yeah, good soldier never leaves a man behind.
Right out of Sergeant Rock and all those movies.
Yeah. Pete, tell them about the
I took some old tennis shoes and nailed them to a big board, and we tried running around to get the animation quality of, how would you actually move with this board strapped to your feet? And it's actually really hard.
Oh, this is an interesting trivia thing. No one's really noticed that we actually have the wrong end of a baby monitor.
That's right.
For those parents there, they probably
know. That's the end that you listen to,
not
that
the
you
end
don't
you talk
broadcast.
into.
Yeah. Oh. In fact, in the original script, we had two-way conversation between them. Come in, Motherbird. Yeah, we're right here. Yeah. We were like, oh, wait a minute.
It's a one-way radio.
It's a one-way radio.
Mrs. Potato Head. Hey, I can dream, kid.
But even the staging of this whole Army Man scene was done very much in the flavor of, combat in the classic, Army films.
Who invited that kid?
More movie magic. How can he actually see through plastic green binoculars?
I know.
At this point, you're really engrossed in the story that's going on, even though you haven't even met Buzz Lightyear yet. In my mind, the Army Man sequence is really when it's sort of, you're just caught up in it at that moment.
The Sarge there did silent hand signals, and we actually got a list from, I think it's the Marines or the Army, of silent hand signals that they use.
It's funny, technically, it's from a story point, it's the one sequence of the movie where we're really not advancing the story as fast as we were with the rest of the movie, but you want to watch this moment so much. It's like, who cares?
It's a huge package.
And now you notice if you cut that, the Potato Head is Catholic. He's an Irish Catholic. Makes sense.
I really love the fact that the toys are so knowledgeable about the batteries. It just shows the intelligence of the toys and the knowledge that they have of this world.
Right. It's a lot like looking at your own kids. It's like they have different priorities in their life, and that they're very serious and important to them. And for them, something like this, batteries falling, coming out or dealing with them, is a big deal.
Mm-hmm. The other thing, this sets up beautifully that these characters know their toys. They know that they are plastic. They know they run on batteries, and they're fully aware of their world. So it sets it up nicely when Buzz Lightyear comes into the room, and he's fully unaware that he's
and we
a toy.
purposely did that so that there would be that contrast.
Right. As the kids come into the room here, we really wanted to have the feeling and the staging and animation and everything of a whirlwind.
Yeah.
Of just, and even through Gary Reitzum, our sound designer, we had him just make it loud and noisy and just
that huge impact when the front door opens, it hits people's chest in the theaters.
Really?
Right. And then he purposely took all the sound out right here, so it's almost completely silent, and it reinforced the feeling of that big
the vacuum that occurs after the whirlwind's gone.
The aftermath.
Early on in the development of the story, we had this image, this idea of setting up the world, and this character is, it is the top toy, is Andy's favorite toy. And the way visually to show that is he has a spot on the bed. And by setting up that spot on the bed, none of the other toys are on the bed. It's so clear as when he's knocked off and something else is put up there. It says it right away, and that's what I think that.
And people catch that, I think.
Big Andy's room welcome.
And now,
The moment of discovery.
Buzz is the only fully white character of all of the characters here. Everything else has got lots of color, and I think some of the early ones, Buzz was red, and that was really cute for the tests, and it works fine. But we needed something that really set him apart. He's brand new.
Oh, wait a minute. Here comes the Darth Vader POV.
Oh, that's right.
We had to have that. What would it look like from Darth Vader's point of view?
A brief Star Wars homage.
There's a lot of brief Star Wars homages in this movie.
Seeing his own reflection in the glass is really cool too. It's something you couldn't really do normally.
Yeah, I mean this is one of those things that with this medium you can do things you can't do in hand-drawn animation, nor can you do in live action. In thinking of what kind of toy Buzz Lightyear would be, we went back and we thought of all of our favorite toys as a kid and tried to put in every cool thing we could remember in one toy. He's about the size of a G.I. Joe. You had Big Jim.
Right, Big Jim, so I wanted the karate chop action,
the little wrist communicator.
The wrist communicator, which came from the Big Jim Wolfpack.
That's right.
It actually, on the cover inside, because we actually had the doll, it said Made in China, and that gave us the idea for Made in Taiwan to use later in the movie.
And we had this newer toy that's the Video Warrior that had all those hilarious sampled voice sounds, and we thought, well, this is definitely more of a modern toy that we have all this LED lights up and the sampled sound.
Right.
And, of course, he had to glow in the dark.
Right.
And Bob Pauly, one of the key designers in this film, he did an amazing job in taking all that and designing it to be like the toy of our dreams.
I remember John saying, I feel really sorry for the toy company that's got to really make this thing.
And, of course, you topped it off with the most modern of appliances. You put a laser on his arm.
That's true.
Absolutely.
It's not a laser; it's a little light bulb.
But also, there's a hint of retro design to him with the big, clear globe for his head.
Right.
And it's also one of those things
which is based on NASA, based on the actual astronaut suits.
Right. When they come out, when the astronauts come out and climb in there, they have that really cool clear helmet, glass helmet.
And, of course, it's all offset then when he opens his wrist communicator with the cheesy decal that sits underneath there.
It's funny, we never, when it came to the casting for both of them, we always had Tom Hanks in mind, and we had nobody else we wanted besides him, and we were so thankful when we got
Woody,
him.
yeah.
And as far as Tim Allen, it was actually John's idea. Tim Allen had just come out with Home Improvement, and
Yeah.
a lot of us hadn't heard of him.
I was a big fan.
I don't know if it'll work.
Yeah, but I was a big fan, and I thought he could do it. And what's interesting is our original idea for the personality of Buzz Lightyear was much more he was a superhero. He was aware he was a superhero.
I'll save you, young space cadet.
Yeah.
That's sort of like
Space
Ghost. Or
it was, and it was more over the top. Tim Allen came in the first recording session back in Detroit. Remember that? He was on hiatus, and we went back to Detroit. And he did it, and he played it much more like a regular guy. And we came back, and at first we thought, this isn't anything like we expected. And we started cutting it in, and we realized, no, wait a minute. This is better. So from that, we kind of evolved the character from being a superhero to more of being like a cop, a really well-trained space cop.
Right.
And he was much more honest that way. He looked at everything very straight on.
And it made him funnier. It made him absolutely funnier to take himself more seriously.
And a much more, the audience can relate to him much more,
Yeah, to the level of what you expect when you see a live-action actor doing something. And it was really great to be able to play with all that.
We actually met Tom Hanks for the first time. He had just finished filming Philadelphia, and so we actually worked with him through the filming of both Forrest Gump and Apollo 13.
Yep. As a matter of fact, by the time when we made the deal, Philadelphia had yet to come out, and then those other two movies. And so it's funny. And same with Tim Allen's show, Skyrocketing. They became superstars after we already got them signed.
Right.
We were just like, thank you, God. When that was happening while we were making this movie.
In this upcoming scene where Buzz flies around the room, it's sort of a Rube Goldberg kind of thing. But we have Buzz close his eyes, so in his mind he is flying around the room. But it is so impressive the fact that he just happens to land on this ball, and of course we had to have Hot Wheels in this movie. And if you're going to have a Hot Wheels, and you have to choose one car, it had to be the Red Baron.
Yeah,
and
there was no argument on that.
No argument on that. Because we're all Hot Wheels aficionados.
And there's also no argument about the ball. That's the ball that shows up in Luxo Jr. and in any number of other Pixar films over the years.
There's a lot of Pixar in-jokes throughout this. And, of course, the Hot Wheels track is orange, which they hadn't made in 15 years.
It showed our age, because that's what we remembered Hot Wheel tracks being.
Purple?
They're all
they
different
got flames
colors now.
and stuff now.
Kids these days.
I don't know. It's all gone to pot.
Originally, we had like different sequences showing that Woody losing his world. That they talked about it, and we showed it in different ways. And Tom Schumacher, the senior VP at Disney in charge of development for all of feature animation, he recommended, why don't you do it as a song, as sort of a montage? And it was like, ding, I could have had a V8. It was a great idea. And so what we did is we came up with all of these vignettes of how Woody's world would change. I know what happens in my house is when we get a new toy. It's like they have to get the sheets and the pajamas and everything. And so that's what we wanted to show, because Buzz Lightyear really is merchandising from some mythical show.
Yes.
And so we thought not only would there be a toy, but there would be all the stuff that comes with a toy. And so there's one scene in Strange Things here that is, to me, is one of the most telling scenes in the whole movie. Is the bed was Woody's domain, and in that one scene, it's replaced with this gigantic image of Buzz Lightyear.
That's right.
So he lost his place, and I think that's one of the most telling scenes in the whole film. And so one of the things we tried to do, too, is have moments with Buzz and the other toys that kind of reflect things that Woody was doing with the toys. Ash Brannon, who's one of the directing animators, he did this great stuff of the exercising.
Checking the pulse.
Checking the pulse.
It's too bad. It never really reads that you can see that the Mr. Spell is actually reading out how many calories Buzz is burning.
How many calories he's burning. Well, I love this. Woody is just losing control. We've established earlier in the film that he really has control over everything. He can send the Green Army Men down. Everything's okay. Buzz arrives. He's losing control.
Right. It's like there was two worlds that Woody had connected. He's losing Andy, and he's losing his allegiance with all the toys. His sense of leadership with them.
What's great about this scene is, in fact, you reveal more about Woody in his reaction shots than you do when he's speaking.
Exactly.
It's all about his non-spoken reactions, his non-verbal reactions to things.
We wrote the dialogue in wanting to say one thing, but in through the acting and the way that Tom Hanks and the actors performed it is to give the subtext that it's something completely different that they're feeling.
Right, and that really comes back to the eyes again. I mean, we're fortunate because of the believability and the look of this kind of medium. People almost treat it like live action. And we're allowed to do things with the eyes to the level of what you expect when you see a live-action actor doing something. And it was really great to be able to play with all that. There's this, it's such a great thing adding, I think it was John's idea of putting, Andy putting his name on the bottom of his toys.
Yeah.
And it became such a great device for ownership, for bonds between Andy and...
It was really like a visual symbol of a bond between them.
It also showed the distance that the time has come, because the Andy written on Woody's foot is like a little kid. I think some of the letters are backwards and it's almost scratched off.
And now we come up to one of your favorite moments, Bonnie.
I know, it is. I think it's just one of my favorite acting moments, actually, is what it really is.
Well, I think it's a great revelation of the power of animation to convey character and story. And it's all done in this one shot here. And Woody doesn't do much more than just turn his head. And yet it conveys so much of Woody's personality and his belief that Buzz Lightyear is a complete buffoon.
Idiot.
Yeah.
I remember in that scene when Woody accidentally opens Buzz's helmet, Doug Sweetland did a really rough pass on it. And he has this great overacting of Buzz gasping for air and falling down at Woody's feet and stuff. And then he didn't have time to do the scene of Woody, so he just had Woody kind of literally just turn his head. Mm-hmm. And I remember seeing it in dailies, and we were on the floor laughing. Yeah. Just on the floor laughing. And I said, don't animate that shot. Just add a little eye blink. That's it. You're done. Mm-hmm. It is so hilarious.
And he didn't listen to you.
He over-animated it, and I made him go back and strip out all of his animation.
Hey, guys, look! It's the real Buzz Lightyear!
I remember the recording session with Tom Hanks doing this. We would wear Tom Hanks out every single recording session. Yep. He would leave he said his diaphragm would hurt for 3 days after our recording sessions.
He would say like, "Oh, I think all my character does is scream in this movie." And we go, "No, don't worry."
But that laugh is it's so funny. It just goes on, and it really made that scene.
This is the moment when Sid is introduced into the picture, our villain.
And Sid Phillips, the bad kid next door, is really Andrew Stanton and Joe Ranft.
Right, our childhoods put
wrapped
together.
up in together. I mean, Joe Joe would trash his toys so fast. He said that like Christmas evening, all of his toys were broken. They would get that morning.
Right.
And actually, I remember, Andrew, you were telling me a story that what you did to one of your broken G.I. Joes as a kid, and I said, that has got to be the introduction of
Right.
Sid.
So this him with the combat Carl out there in the backyard is something I actually did with my friend Keith Knowlton when we were 8 years old out in his parents' field, and we strapped an M80 to the back of G.I. Joe.
Well, and then you put him in
a running pose. Said, "Run, Joe, run, run! You're never gonna make it." And you blew him up.
And Andrew, Keith Knowlton, is he out on parole yet? Or?
Actually, if you look closely, he may be more obscured, but actually there are little body parts that go flying up in the air from the poor toy soldier, and I think that was a moment of concern about just how gruesome that would be.
Well, we wanted G.I. Joe. Because
Yeah.
I had G.I. Joes since I was a kid. I lived for my G.I. Joes.
Right.
G.I. Joes and Hot Wheels were most important to me.
But
and,
funny, they
and
wouldn't let us
Hasbro,
use
Ralph,
it.
Hasbro wouldn't let us use it because
We're blowing 'em up.
would blow
They
'em
don't
up.
like us blowing up their favorite toy.
Lauren Carpenter, one of
our technical directors. Yeah.
yeah.
Came up with virtual reality. Or
Virtual reality.
Virtual reality. See, I can't even say it.
Yeah. Which I thought only a few people would get, but
Everybody
the theater
gets it.
Oh, the adults
Really?
always get it. Yeah.
This sequence up here in Andy's room is so nice just because what they did, it's sort of really a magic hour lighting, and it's so beautiful. They really did a good job.
Get off
Get
me.
out of here.
The Magic 8 Ball is such a big hit, too, at this moment.
Had to be in there.
Even Woody consults the Magic 8 Ball.
So we studied carefully all the different options of what he could say.
Right, don't count on it was the winner.
Seemed
Yeah.
like
but
the
but
most
again, it's a
appropriate.
great revelation about the world of toys. So these toys know how to use each other as is appropriate, right?
Woody's basically a nice guy, but he's been pushed to the edge. And so, and this is sort of an innocent thing. He's just trying to get him stuck behind the desk, which we all know is a place you lose toys. And when we were designing this, we were sitting there watching Raiders of the Lost Ark, and we looked at it and we said, this is what we want.
Yeah.
We want that giant boulder rolling down
ball.
where the escalation goes, and it's like gotten way out of hand. And even the sound of the push pins flying down and hitting on the desk around Buzz, those are actually the sound effects from that sequence. So we have
Of the
not only
arrows in Raiders of the Lost
the
Ark.
arrows in the beginning of Raiders of the Lost Ark, and also it's the actual sound of the big boulder rolling from Raiders.
Yeah, a little,
and so Craig Good did a great job in staging this, so that with these, he called them Spielberg cams, these kind of camera moves that
Sort
were
of swoop under
Woody and Buzz both to give this impending, like, oh my goodness.
Originally, we had Woody intentionally push Buzz out of the window.
But he was going too far.
He was
and
going
so
too
that's why we
far.
made it sort of much more
It's
of
a
an
mistake.
innocent.
He meant to just stick him behind the dresser.
Right.
There's the Lassie reference. What
yeah.
is it,
Oh
boy?
yeah. Well, Andrew and I were driving once, and we came up with this idea that RC can't talk, and
Right.
but they communicate to him, and so it's like a Lassie movie. It's
Right,
like
you gotta
you know,
put in the definitive. What is it, boy? He's trying to say something.
yeah. It's like Timmy's down a well.
And the lighting here I really like too. It's a dramatic, warm and cool that really punches the attitude.
That's really important to me because that's what it's about, is supporting the story and the emotion and kind of helping ground it visually.
I love that. I don't like confrontations.
Yeah.
Being chewed out by a little green army man, it's just you wouldn't want to be in that position.
I remember Lee Ermey in the recording session. It's like we said, okay,
ad-libbed
this
that
is
line
it.
too, yeah.
And he actually wrote some of that being chewed out, and he says it's like poetry, And he took a deep breath, and he just laid into it. And I think the needles went to red on that, and he just chewed out Woody like you can't believe.
This is the most probably difficult scene in the film that Ash Brannon got to animate.
Yeah, it's by far the most complex.
Everything's animated here.
Yeah, like having all those army men climb
Stuck
all
to
over
him.
him. Yeah.
All the characters.
And then again, everything goes to quiet.
And this is one of the funniest scenes, I think. After Andy's coming in looking for Buzz, and Woody looks over and sees Potato Head and Etch-a-Sketch. It's very funny, but it also is such a great story point that he is dead meat.
This really seals his fate.
Right, and you don't
Yeah.
have to do it with dialogue. It's always great when you can
Right.
avoid dialogue.
Director John Lasseter.
I think we all had this feeling of when we finally saw this stuff lit, it was just like,
We're outside.
yeah, it's like, to this point in the movie, everything pretty much was inside or looking out to
That's right.
Sid's backyard.
Art director Ralph Eggleston.
it really blew everybody away. It was the first glimpse of the outside world we got in 3D. It wasn't just a flat or painting like it's been up to now.
Barrel of monkeys.
Yeah, had to get them in.
Yeah, and I love the line, "We need more monkeys." And in fact, I think, Ralph, that was your motto throughout the whole
That's
production,
right.
trying to get more
Whenever
people
we needed
to work.
more people,
We need more
We
monkeys.
need more monkeys.
Where could he be?
This is a tribute to Bob Pauly in a lot of ways. But Bob and John and I we all kind of have a affinity for 50s style architecture, and so we went around town and took a lot of photographs of 50s style Googie style.
Yeah, Googie style
you know.
gas stations.
Yeah, Bob just had a field day on that kind of stuff.
Supervising animator Pete Doctor.
This whole bug gag, too, was really cool because it's all this exposition. He's talking and talking, and you don't really need to hear it. And so seeing this visual bug, the goo smeared
Well, I
on
remember
it,
it's one of those things that
pluses
I had
the
to
scene.
fight. I had to plead to let
It
us
wasn't
model
in the schedule to model the
the
bug.
Yeah, I
That's
had to
right.
model a bug. In fact, I think in hindsight, I wish we covered him completely with bugs. But that would have been a bit over.
Not an idea we promote on my planet.
This whole fight sequence was a great chance to parody classic fight, like Arnold Schwarzenegger fight scenes.
It's great using the toy elements for this fight.
Right. And in fact, there was this one point when Woody is punching Buzz's face. And actually, I feel like we had kind of gone too far right here.
Yeah.
But when they added the squeak sound, I was like, okay, it's a toy
It
again.
plays. It plays.
It plays.
Producer Bonnie Arnold.
This is actually my favorite scene in the movie. First of all, it's the most beautiful scene I remember the first time I saw it rendered with the stars and the moon.
Co-writer Andrew Stanton.
When the car pulls away, that emotional point is really the figurehead moment that really started the whole idea of Toy Story. We had this image of a toy being left behind and seeing its owner drive off and thinking, what if a toy was looking for you as hard as you were looking for your favorite toy?
Seemed to be at a huge refueling station of some sort.
Producer Ralph Guggenheim.
One of the great things about the way the story evolved on Toy Story is the way that we were able to pack in a number of different developments in the story all into one scene. I mean, this is not only a scene when Buzz and Woody get separated, but it's also the scene in which Woody confronts Buzz with the fact that he's a toy, and we set up the enmity between them that is essential for any buddy picture.
Shut up! Just shut up, you idiot!
But this scene under the truck was probably the most hammered sequence from a writing standpoint. We always knew what we wanted. We wanted them to have such strong opinions and anger at each other, but neither of them saw the world the same way. And we feel that now how it is exactly how we want you to, as the audience, to feel. But it took us so many passes to finally get that across.
I'm very, very proud of this, probably more so than almost any other scene in the film. In this sequence, you have the wonderful opportunity to where each character looks at the other and says, "You are the craziest person I have ever met in my life." And as the audience member, you know exactly where they're coming from.
You are a toy!
You are a toy. I just love that. I actually, that was my idea for using as the title of the film when we weren't sure it would be Toy Story. I thought you are a toy might make a good title.
A lot
And
of
the
people
Star
don't
Trek
get
salute.
the Star Trek, yeah.
Good riddance, Shalloony. I love that. It's so Tom Hanks, too. Or Woody, as I should say.
It's the Pizza Planet truck. It's everybody's worst nightmare, a pizza driver. You know, he's got, half hour or it's free, And this guy, he's like a heavy metal dude, and you could see that he really doesn't take care of this truck very well, and he drives like a maniac.
It's very unsanitary, too.
Very unsanitary. I mean, would you buy a pizza from this guy? Unbelievable. You look at all the rust and everything. There's just lots of detail put on this truck.
And here is, again, Glenn McQueen. He does this fantastic scene of Woody here. This grin at the end just kills me. Right there. It gets me every time. It was completely unexpected. I remember in dailies when it happened, we were all howling with laughter.
That's Joey's love for many of the artists who work in a film. You can pass them off a great idea that you already like, and then they come back and have plussed it all even more so.
Exactly.
And it feeds everybody else. And if you can get that all across the board, it's just such a luxury to have when you're making a picture.
this scene here when Woody climbs into the back of the Pizza Planet truck was a much longer scene. It was at this comedy where he is just getting beat up by this tool chest. In fact, we have some hilarious, very early stuff that Tom Hanks did for us. Some very funny sort of stuff where he's getting all. He starts calling this toolbox El Rojo.
Yeah.
Now we come to Pizza Planet, which actually for the longest time was Pizza Putt.
Mm-hmm. That's right. We had it was a miniature golf course, pizza parlor, miniature golf course, and
it's almost embarrassing because it seems so obvious now that this is something to delude Buzz to think that he's getting home, and it has all the space themes in it. But for like two or 3 years, it did not exist. And at the last minute, we're like, wait a minute.
Duh.
A space themed, pizza restaurant.
If you look carefully at the two sentry guards at the front gate, we've got little lights in their eyes that kind of go back and forth like the sentries in...
the Cylons in Battlestar Galactica. And the staffs have got...
They have the staffs with a pizza and a pepperoni shield.
Yeah, pepperoni shield, that's right.
It's one of the most elaborate sets we built, given the short amount of time that we actually spent here.
Right, and it was so great that it was coming from Disney as a movie because it's such their stuff,
Well, my goal was to make it so every kid in America wanted to go to Pizza Planet.
Right. They've got to make this place.
They've got to build it.
Yep.
It's great. It's just too cool.
I would want to eat there,
Yeah.
Here's the killer shot.
Yeah, poor Rex Grignon had to animate this shot with more humans.
17 humans, right?
And they're very complex models.
He's dead now.
He's still working on the shot, in fact. He'll be done next week.
He finished it pretty quickly.
Whack an Alien.
I mean, it's one of those things that with Whack a Alien, it was an homage to Alien.
Oh, yeah.
And what cracked me up is so many people say, why doesn't it say Whack an Alien?
If you look carefully at the people, notice that they all resemble Andy somewhat similar.
Andy and Mom and Molly.
With different hairstyles
hair.
and different skin colors.
One of the things that we do every now and then is we have what we call gag sessions. So what we tend to do is get some people who we think are really funny.
Fresh meat.
Fresh meat. and come in to help sort of stir some ideas. Probably the crowning achievement, which is of that meeting, was we had this idea that they would get caught in a crane game. And it was shaped like a spaceship, and Buzz would perceive this as a way to get home, and it's a way that they get caught by Sid. And so we kept saying, what's in this? And we originally had these little plastic pizza slices with sunglasses on.
Kind of a takeoff of all the stupid logo characters
that
exist.
And we were contemplating it, and then it was Gary Trousdale, the director down at Disney of Beauty and the Beast and Hunchback of Notre Dame. He all of a sudden said, Buzz would come in there and say, who's your leader? And they naturally would say, the Claw. And as soon as he said that,
exploded,
we were howling with laughter, and we immediately realized, well, yes, if you're a toy and you're alive and your life is only in this glass box,
that's all you
and
know.
Occasionally this claw would come down and take one of you and take you away, pretty soon you would start worshiping that claw.
That's why it's so funny, because it makes sense.
It was our actors on helium to be the Martians.
All inhaling lots of helium and reading the lines.
To be honest, it ended up mostly Jeff Pigeon.
Yeah.
It just cracks me up.
I loved being in the theater when this scene came because people would just
go into hysterics.
I can't believe what I'm seeing, and I'm having so much fun seeing it. And you're just like, yeah. Well, it became this running theme to constantly touch on every science fiction icon we could with Buzz Lightyear. Close Encounters, them all wanting to touch him.
The other homage to Close Encounters is when they point up to the claw. It's just like when they asked where did the sound come from in India.
In India, right.
Well, the tension of this is actually really, it's very funny, but it's also very tense.
Yeah.
And it's also completely unrealistic that the crane can
to what a crane can really hang on to it, right?
But we said, we don't care.
It's the movies.
I think someone asked me about that, and I said, this is an animated movie. We can do whatever we want. But we really tried to be as realistically, physically as we
try
should.
to avoid those.
And a great transition here that sets up their new
That's one of my
predicament.
favorite transitions in the movie.
Very subtle, isn't it?
Yes, isn't it? This house is evil.
This house is evil.
This is also the first opportunity to really get to see Buzz Lightyear's glow in the dark very clearly. The green on him. really lots of fun.
I had so much fun adding. I wrote that line of him saying, "Would you be quiet?" And what I loved about it was that it gave you the sense that this alien had been jabbering the entire ride from Pizza Planet.
He was so excited because he's getting closer to Nirvana. You know? Lee Unkrich, our editor, said a friend of his used to get his dog to sit down and set dog treats on his nose, and he would sit there with his dog treat on his nose until he said, "Okay, you can eat it." And I said, "That's the way that Sid's got to feed Scud, the little alien." Yeah.
And we get into Sid's house, which is avocado green and harvest gold.
It was your mission.
Right. It's
two of your favorite colors, right?
Definitely. It's like early 70s home and garden. We found some great magazines from that period that we really played up on. When we get to Sid's house, it's supposed to be evil and dark. And you know, we wanted to have fun with it, too. Before the actual dark place, it's Sid's room. The house itself, we had to kind of back off on and just say, yeah, it's ugly and you wouldn't want to live there necessarily, but Sid's room is really the darkest place in the room.
It's a tribute to bad taste.
It's a tribute to bad taste is right.
You know, a lot of people think Sid is so horrible, but really he is the most creative character in the whole film.
He's not evil, he's just misunderstood.
That's right.
Every time you see him, he is play acting. You know, really creatively.
No different than Andy in the beginning of the movie.
I tell people that I said, well, maybe it's just because it's defensive, because it's what I was like as a kid. But I think that Sid's more true. That Sid had more imagination than anybody in the movie. I mean, everything he's doing, like you're saying, he's play acting, and I think that's how most kids act with their toys. You know.
Locked.
Sid's room really represented the absolute opposite in every way of Andy's room. We wanted Andy's room to be light and friendly and airy, and the toys are well taken care of. And in Sid's room, it's dark. It's always dark, no matter what time of day. And everything is trashed, and all of his toys are just really treated badly. And so to manifest that, we thought that, well, this guy, in thinking of him as being very creative, Sid, he would take his toys apart, try to figure out how they work, and he would put them back together in different ways.
He's not just into destruction. He's into just,
he plays in a
twisted sense of fun.
Right. And so we thought, well, this is so also we wanted to give the feeling to the audience and to the two main characters that if Sid's in the room, you're going to die. Right? You're going to die. And then when Sid's out of the room, you know, we have this moment of like, okay, he's out of the room, let's find a way out of here. But immediately we want to give the feeling like, uh-oh, there's something alive in here.
There's still something going on.
It's sort of like going camping and, you know, like just in the darkness you hear noises and like, there's something alive out there and I know it's going to eat me. So to make the main characters completely uncomfortable the entire time.
Even with Sid out of the room, they're still in
the danger's
trouble.
still there.
Right.
And I think that we never even considered any other option than making the mutant toys mute.
Oh, great. Yeah, and if anyone attacks us, we can blink them to death.
Rex is still working at it.
Right. That's
Everybody else is giving up.
Faithful
Well,
Rex.
you know, and I also love the fact that they know the cat. They know this
Whiskers.
neighborhood,
Yeah.
Whiskers.
Yeah.
They know, you know, get
Just like
out
they know
of here.
Sid, just like they know Scott.
Right.
Yeah.
Why doesn't Mom see the flashlight coming out of her window?
Shh.
She was turning.
Oh.
Pay no attention to that man. And now the familiar scenario we've all been where you can't find something and your mother tells you you're just not looking hard enough.
Where was the last place you left
looked?
it?
Right. Yeah.
How many times have we heard that?
I really like also this little quiet moment between Slinky and Bo. It's like two people who still believe in him. They just kind of look at each other, and it's really...
This transition never worked in the story reels, but once it was rendered, it was great.
It was gorgeous.
Going from night to day.
That's gorgeous.
So here we go right into the torture.
Back into our Star Wars homage.
Star Wars homage number 458. Well, this is actually sort of in between Star Wars homage and that sort of Nazi interrogator from Raiders of the Lost Ark.
Right.
You know?
That's right.
We were down at Disney, and we were talking to Mike Gabriel, who's one of the directors of Pocahontas. And we were talking about all the things that we used to do with our toys as kids. And he said, when I was a kid, I used to burn things with a magnifying glass. You're going to have that in the film, aren't you? And Andrew and I looked at each other and said, we are now!
Supervising Technical Director Bill Reeves.
The particle system effects was the main tool used for doing all the the smoke and the sparks and that kind of stuff. Was a technique called particle systems, where you model a lot of very simple shapes and you sort of blend. There's a lot of them, so they add together to create an effect.
So even though Buzz is deluded, he is in control of the situation. He's a superhero.
Yeah. That's right.
He knows what to do.
I was
in case
lucky.
of danger.
I was lucky that I got to board this sequence, and this is where I came up with using the karate chop arm to for Buzz to defend him, for Woody to defend himself with Buzz. And
I love this.
It was such a great.
I love this.
It's another
fun
great
moment to
revealing
do.
moment about toys.
Well, I think the best thing about this is Buzz's line, "How you doing that?"
Right. It's like playing off this weird illogical logic.
Yeah. This scene, when I was showing it to my kids at home in an early version, this is the one that my kids always put their head under the blanket. One of the things that we always tried to do in these two characters is show contrast, how Buzz would do something in control and Woody would do something he's a complete wimp. And I think this is one of my favorite ones, is a simple thing of Buzz just running across this opening. He runs across and then he motions, to Woody to go on. And then Woody just crawling like a complete scaredy cat.
It was great contrast.
This is one of those moments where I thought, that dog sounds too much like a tiger. But I was overruled.
I think that was some of the T-Rex breathing from Jurassic Park.
Yeah. The scene where he opens his eye and it dilates.
Yeah.
Yes.
I mean, that's straight out of Jurassic Park.
Yeah.
There's a whole controversy over Scud's whiskers at one point, but Eben Osby, our associate technical director, came in on a weekend and created whiskers for Scud and did them in record time. Mm-hmm. And those whiskers definitely add to his cheerful demeanor.
Right. This is the moment in the movie where Buzz really realizes that he's a toy. Woody's told him, but he doesn't really realize it until he actually sees this commercial about Buzz Lightyear toys and that they're available everywhere.
If it's not the Army Man, I always hear this sequence is probably people's favorite sequence. That when we first did it, it was very 50s and retro because we just thought that was fun. But then we were asked by Disney to make it more modern, and we started looking at modern day commercials, and they're just assaultive. They attack kids.
They're assaultive. So we got.
That's why we
so
brought
we
in
thought,
Penn Jillette.
who can be the most assaultive voice we can get? And we thought Penn Jillette of Penn and Teller, the great magician. He is so loud, and so we had him record it, and
it was incredible.
He was so loud that they said in the lobby of the recording studio they could hear him through the
all the
soundproof walls.
doors.
Yeah. Actually, we're here. Ralph, John, and I got to be the male chorus with him.
Oh, that's
right.
Buzz
Lightyear.
Oh, you ready?
Lightyear.
1, 2, 3.
Buzz Lightyear!
There you go.
Very nice, man.
It says "Made in Taiwan." And it's like he's never. It's like it was there all the time, but he never saw it.
He never
looked under
never
the
even
cover.
realized what it was about. Yeah.
And now comes one of the songs that just is a great example of why Randy Newman was the perfect fit for writing the score and the songs in this movie.
Yeah.
He can combine all of his ability in writing great rock and roll songs with songs that evoke incredible, heartfelt sympathy for a character.
I love this shot because it's like hitting the nail on the head as many times as you can. I want to fly. So, okay, let's show an open window, and let's show a bird flying.
But and then Woody says, what does Woody say?
You're a toy, you can't fly. It's like, okay, now let's have an airplane go by. Now let's have a balloon go past. It's Get it? Symbolism. He can't.
And you're a little guy in the world.
You can't fly.
I love those traction boots he's got.
Yeah. Well, he climbs really
Translucent wings. Look at that.
He's a superhero.
Actually, in that shot as he climbs up is probably one of the few places you could see his copyright Disney embossed on
there
it.
There it is.
Yeah, there it is, right there. Copyright Disney.
And here's where it's just kind of gray-green sky, and it's kind of overcast, and there's a little bit of light seeping through the clouds. Very, very, very subtle lighting here, and it's getting subtly darker through all of this.
I was riding down on the airplane this morning, and a kid saw that I had a Toy Story briefcase, and he was like, he had to be 6 years old, sitting next to me. He said, I saw that movie. The scene where he loses his arm, that was really sad.
There was a lot of worry that by having, dismembering one of your main characters, it was going too far.
Well, how are we going
and how are we going to deal with this? So we deal with it in the classic Pixar way. We started making fun of his dismembered arm as fast as we can.
Hey, if Potato Head's not enough, let's have another dismembered character.
Yep.
Hannah in her own demented way.
Most painful scene in the film, right?
Oh, you used to have a
that
whole
hurts.
sequence of Woody in the closet.
That's a pain that's going to linger.
Well, actually, it's funny because we had Tom Hanks saying that normal, and when he saw this in our last session with him, he goes, "Oh, wait, back up. I got to do this again." And he kind of did it like this.
Yeah, it was very nice.
It was really funny.
The next scene, the tea party scene, one of the things that we felt like wasn't working was the fact that Buzz was sort of catatonic after his fall.
There were two
things.
things. One is that Buzz was catatonic after his fall, and the other one was that from the moment that Buzz and Woody get into Sid's hands, that the movie takes a real grim turn, and there was no comic relief in all this. And so, once again, our story guys, with Joe Ranft and Andrew Stanton, were able to pull off a masterful bit of work by combining both a comic moment and something that reveals a lot about Buzz's character and his situation here.
And it's actually one of the best performances too of the whole character Tim Allen did. It's one of the last things we did with him, and it was so funny because he tried it as sort of demented and stuff. Finally, we said, "You're just drunk. You're drunk on tea. You're just." And he did this hilarious performance.
Woody slaps Buzz, if you notice, with his own hand. Which was inspired from Commando. We heard this. Yes, it was.
Arnold Schwarzenegger.
We heard about this story in the movie Commando, where he gets hidden in a shed, and this whole army of South American army is going to attack him, and he cuts off this guy's arm with a machete. And he asked the director if he could how about in the next take I pick up his arm and I smash it with his own fist. And the director, I think it's McTiernan or something, just said, "I think it's going a little too far, Arnold." And I just remember that when we were doing this, yeah. We can
Let's do that.
This battleship sequence, I think, shows what the toys do when they're waiting for something more exciting to happen.
Well, what I like about it is it's strip battleship. Right?
Oh, yeah.
That's right.
And he wants the nose.
I want the nose. Give me the nose.
He's already wearing the hat. But
look how bad of a player.
Yeah. Well, so if you really look at it, he's covered the board with hits and just little squares.
He's
where
missed
the boats
everything
are.
but the boats. He's that stupid.
Yeah, he's that stupid.
And
he grouped all of his ships together in exactly the same spot.
Right. So if you hit one,
you got them all.
Right.
The purpose of this scene was to just show kind of the desperation of Woody. It starts out with it's such a good idea. He's on it. He's going to get saved. This is great. And as this scene goes on, no one will help him, and it gets worse. And so he starts out at one level, and he ends it much worse off.
Right.
And it's sort of the thing that we've looked at. Every scene in Toy Story, well, we always try to have the beginning and end be opposite, where he starts out in a good position and end in a bad position, or vice versa.
Right.
Well, we found Tom Hanks is really good with props because I brought to this recording session a fake severed arm that my teenage son has that we used to close in car doors and stuff like that. So I brought it to the session and gave it to Tom. And I said, just ad-lib. I explain the scene. You're supposed to be doing a little puppet show with Buzz's arm to convince the toys that Buzz is alive. And he took off, and he did the funniest routine. Just one ad-lib after another. He did where he's reading Buzz's palm. He's, has Rose giving him a back rub.
Scrub.
Oh, Buzz!
Little
A little lower.
Magic fingers.
Magic. Yeah, that's right. Buzz, you got magic fingers.
Right.
And it was so hilarious. But a lot of this was used, like the secret best friend handshake.
But if you think about it, we put him through a lot of props. I mean, he had to put his face in a pillow when he was shoved in the bed to do that thing. He had to wear a bonnet for a while for some scene that we didn't have anymore.
Well, actually,
that
it
was
was
a scene
because
that never made it in.
Right.
Well, it's because of this scene we realized he was so good at props that from then on, anytime Woody had something, we had these props for him, and he was great. When they find out that Woody has the severed arm, I think the moment is so touching for me because of Slinky. The dogs had so much faith in Woody. He's held out and believed in him, and here is proof positive. And the expression is so great, and the fact that he just simply closes the blinds is a wonderful thing. It's really emotional.
Yeah.
Even this shot coming up here with the clouds coming over the house.
Right, that's a painting.
That's a painting that in the movement was created by morphing.
Right.
And then now, the mutant toys are eating him alive. That's what we really wanted to give the feeling of Woody and the audience, that they're just feeding on him. He's still alive. But Woody's actually doing something selfless kind of for the first time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, instinctually he's going after to help Buzz.
Well, because
he doesn't even realize
Woody's
it.
in a place now where all his options are exhausted.
Right. Buzz is all he's got.
That's right.
Yeah. But it's this wonderful moment when you find out they fixed him, and then you see the other toys.
That's what's really nice with the whole audience. You watch them do the same thing.
And all of a sudden they go back in their mind and say, wait a minute, all along these characters were good. Mm-hmm. They're selfless. And you look back to when you thought they were cannibals, and they're simply just taking the parts of the toys as quickly as they can out of the way of Sid.
Right. And when they blocked the doorway, they were trying to warn him about Scud. I mean, when you go back, you start reading all that stuff.
So it's all this double entendre, double purposes for everything that the mutant toys have done.
And then it's back to business as usual because Sid is coming back up to the room.
Right.
We used to get a lot of weird logic police people going, it's like 5 or 6 o'clock. How did he get this box so late for the postal service? It's like,
who delivers packages that late?
It's like,
we're like, I don't think people will notice.
Who cares?
He just got home.
I love this Fat Cow Farms milk crate that Sid stole from the back of Safeway. And somewhere stamped on it says, "You will be punished to the maximum extent of the law if you steal this." And of course, Sid had no qualms with that.
One of the reasons that we did this convoluted thing of getting Woody in that milk crate is for having him trapped in it. And the convoluted thing of Sid taking the toolbox and lifting it all the way up on top of the milk crate to get the tape out. Right? It makes, no one ever notices it, but it was done just so Woody would be trapped.
The rain effect is one of those shots that looks very simple, but was very hard to do.
Basically, the lead technical person on the rain was Tom Porter. This is a little particle system shot. It actually was used in a couple other places, but in particular here, the rain on the window was the major challenge. And then we watched In Cold Blood. Cold Blood was the movie we used as the the lead into this, or our conceptual thing. We watched that a lot and got some really great ideas from there. Inspiration kinds of stuff to make this be very moody.
Karen Kaiser, she has 2 sons, and she's such a great mom. And this is like, she did such a great job with this scene because there's a real sensitive quality to the animation of both Andy and the mom.
Oh, it's just computer animation, John.
What?
It's not
This
real?
is with computers? I just love so much is Rex. It's like, he's so nervous about traveling, and then the fact that these 2 guys are stuck together. No one else would pick me.
Yeah. It's also a great setup or a contrast to the scene coming up next, where it's a little bit of light comedy, and then we go into the serious stuff.
Mm-hmm. Right.
If only you could see how much Andy misses you.
Producer Ralph Guggenheim.
This is probably the most heartfelt scene between Buzz and Woody, the scene where Woody finally reveals how important he understands Buzz is. And he does it out of desperation to try and get Buzz to get out of this state of depression he's in.
Yeah.
And at the same time, it tells us exactly what the rules of the world are here, as seen by Woody through his experienced eyes.
Director John Lasseter.
I'm so proud of this scene because it's extremely kind of complex as far as having a minimal amount of words and trying to get a lot of meaning.
Right.
And there's so much said in the subtlety, the facial acting, as well as the words. And also by keeping Woody sort of behind these bars and having to make it so you can see his eyes through the one opening there, it really kind of contained him, and so it really, I think, helped keep the acting real subtle and minimal.
Right.
This is the stuff you dream about as an animator. Oh,
yeah.
But it's also the hardest
subtext.
stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, everybody thinks the big wild stuff would be hard, but this is really
tougher.
hard.
Yeah.
Supervising animator Pete Docter.
This scene has a great arc where Woody starts intense and excited and goes downhill, and Buzz starts way down and works his way up. We actually animated quite a bit of stuff that was cut out of this sequence. We started with like 5 pages of stuff and cut. I think it works better for the film, although at the time I was like, no, you can't cut it.
Well, those were your scenes.
Yeah,
you cut.
I know.
Producer Bonnie Arnold.
I find it amazing that you would not think that basically none of the actors recorded their dialogue together. The picture editors, dialogue editors, did such a great job of cutting the dialogue together that you would think they were all acting in the same room together.
the lamest pull string line.
I know.
That moment there is great because you've got this real heartfelt emotional stuff, but people laugh at that line.
Right.
But they still feel the emotion.
Oh, yeah.
Well, because it's painful, right?
Yeah.
I'm just a loser.
And you need that moment of relief in the midst of a scene like this.
Co-writer Andrew Stanton.
This is where all these little things paid off that we were putting in just for touches at the beginning to flavor it. Looking at Andy's name under the shoe and the Made in Taiwan and the thing, it really just helped sell a lot of emotional hits.
Art director Ralph Eggleston.
Throughout this entire sequence, the sun is rising. You kind of see a very subtle change from these somber blues. And throughout this, when they realize that they really need each other to not only to escape, but to get back to Andy, the sun really breaks through the clouds, and they kind of bond together and begin their escape.
The detail is incredible. I mean, you feel it.
Yeah,
So
you know
much
it's there.
You feel.
Yeah, a lot of times, you think that, oh, look at all this work we did. Let's show it off. Let's put lights back there. But no, it's not important.
There's so much detail, just junk all over the desk.
But it's all modeled.
Yeah.
Eggman movers.
The Eggman was Ralph Eggleston's login. Yeah. So that's why the moving.
And here comes the big cheat, where Buzz is straight now, and there they keep going.
They keep going. They're about 3 feet from the wall, but Buzz is still pushing
from off the wall.
Go, Buzz, go!
You can do it.
It's a movie.
The hyper-extended version of Buzz Lightyear.
But nobody notices. Hopefully.
Another payback to all bullies.
Yeah.
For me. I'm hoping they're all dreaming about ponies.
He is a little kid after all. That's what I like about it so much. He's still just a little kid.
Mm-hmm. Is that a can of Dr. Catmull's root beer I see behind us?
Yeah.
There's so much detail, just junk all over the desk.
But it's all modeled.
Yeah.
Yeah, Ed Catmull's head of Pixar, and
Like
with Dr. Catmull's old-fashioned root beer. Well, it's really at this point that Woody is starting, they've bonded now, Buzz and Woody, and here you start seeing that all the forces of around them are keeping them apart.
Right. The minute Woody wants to be and they join together, everything pulls them apart.
See, and right there, he's saying he's relying on Buzz. Yep. It's like to think. I think
fact,
is what would. That's right. We had a line once.
Yeah.
He said,
"What would
Buzz do?" He'd say something stupid.
Yeah.
Not an option.
Not a plan. Not a plan.
Right.
He'd say something, and then that's where he gets the idea.
But we felt like that actually projected too specifically what he was going to do.
Yeah.
And he asked, and he honestly asked for help here, which is great. And I love this scene. Angie Glocka animated that.
Yeah, it's just all motion. Head. There's no facial change. It's just the timing.
But you read that same expression differently now.
Yeah, it's different attitudes.
Bob Gordon gave us our editor. Right. Bob Gordon gave us
for
the
those
Morse
who know Morse code.
You can figure it out. Don't tell them what it is. They have to
gotta work if you
quick. Run to your almanac. Look up your Morse code dictionary.
This scene where we cut to Andy in his room completely empty, to me is one of the most emotional scenes in the film. You see the box that says Andy's Toys, and to me, I just always remembered when you move, this was your life. Probably lived all his life in this room, and to see it completely empty, and hoping that if they
would uncover them, right?
He would uncover them. Somewhere they're hidden, and he realizes they're not around, and all he has left is his hat that represents Woody and the box that represents Buzz.
This is that moment, that score moment that I think Randy did such a good job at. We had the Great Escape for scratch music and gave Randy an idea of what we were looking for, but I think Randy took that and made it about 100 times better. But it really moves us along.
And it builds.
And it builds, and it gives you the
And it finally hits its most marching band sort of feeling at the moment when they start going into the ductwork of the house, and it really just, it's a constant build all through here.
Joss Whedon, our scriptwriter, wrote these lines, and he actually, when he wrote Wind the Frog, we loved that line so much, we actually created a frog just so that there would be a frog to say Wind the Frog.
We kind of did this big sort of Rube Goldbergian kind of plan that's so complex, and we wanted to keep it from the audience so they didn't know what was going on. And you come in right at the very end to where there's a little bit of information being given, but who knows, what's actually going to happen. And originally we had just Roller Bob and Woody go down. But then we've grown to like these mutant toys so much, you want to see them get back at Sid.
Right, so we had to add a layer of how to get everybody outside.
In the original script, Woody asks for help. One of the characters goes out through the vent, and you hear some noise, and comes screeching through the door, comes Barbie in her pink Corvette.
From Hannah's room.
From Hannah's room. He goes to Hannah's room and gets Barbie and comes in. And she was dressed in a prom dress in the pink Corvette. She looked fantastic.
But she was tough as nails.
She was like Linda Hamilton from Terminator 2, and she grabbed Woody and said, "Come with me if you want to live."
Right.
And she drives him past the dog, and the dog's chasing him. She drives him out to the backyard.
Right.
And Woody said some great line about,
Right.
I wish I was anatomically correct.
Right. Sid's actually saying some funny walla all through this when you're paying attention to Woody and the other toys. He's actually searching for the ignition sticks.
Yes.
Mom, where are the
the matches?
Mind. Here
Where are
they
the
are.
matches?
You know?
And we always envision that Sid's dad is the kind of consumer that the big hardware stores prey on, to where they get him into the home handyman that never finishes any job, and so he started putting in a sprinkler system in the backyard
years ago,
and he left the trenches out. And,
right, and everything's half done.
This scene was originally to get Woody the match.
Well, we originally had it to where he had like sprinkled matches all over him, and then we realized you can just do it with one match. There are so many weeds in this backyard. I think there's 18,000 weeds.
9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
And we actually, in our first pass, had Woody come fully to life at the last second and scare Sid, but we decided it was too much, and it was much more interesting to just have him use his pull string. We were starting to use it again more and more in the film.
Right. Well, this is the thing that always has kept him down.
Right.
This it's a thing, a scratchy voice box, and he uses it to defeat Sid.
But we couldn't help but have that little button. Let him come to life just for like a half a line. So maybe even Sid doesn't sure he saw what he saw.
But it builds better this way.
We originally wanted to have the toys come out from under the ground, but it was too technically complex, so we decided to have this trench filled with muddy water, because it was much easier to do, and have them rise up out of the water, which actually works. And then we did this muddy shader on the Green Army Men.
Yeah.
In the story reel, there were all these great shots of like arms bursting out of the ground.
Right. Those combat Carls are the same model as the Green Army Men, just a little larger with spare parts stuck on them. So Rich Quaid got to animate the one scene of Woody coming to life in front of people.
So play nice.
Of course, the biggest comment from the outside world here was this stock footage? Or was this really a computer model?
No, every plant in Sid's backyard was hand-placed, every weed.
And here is Hannah's payback. It's for all the little sisters in the world that
were ever tormented by a big brother.
Tormented by their big brothers.
Nice work, fellas. Good job.
What's great is Gary Rodgson did a great job of creating sound effects for all the toys in that scene.
Right, he gave sort of, even though they didn't talk, he gave a voice.
Right, and it's as though they're all talking to each other, congratulating each other on what they've done.
Right.
The quickest goodbye in the world.
It wasn't there at all for a while.
I know.
They just ran away, and we thought, wait
a minute. Yeah, he's got to say goodbye.
I just didn't want it mushy. So
that line there of Buzz, we used to have it saying, Woody, I'm stuck, come help me. And then we realized, no, he would be more giving. At this point, they are constantly helping each other. So he just go, you made it, it's okay. Now they're together, and so they're working together at this point.
Right, they're actually finally, for the first time in the film, on an even plane where they both want the same thing.
Right.
For the same reason.
And so they're working together.
We decided once they're finally working together that they would just constantly sacrifice for one another. They would, and each sacrifice would empower them to get over the next obstacle, and then the next guy would sacrifice, and blah blah blah. And it was really nice.
Even now that they're working together, Buzz runs like an athlete. He's Carl Lewis, and Woody is a wimp. Yeah, look at those arms.
Yeah.
It's great. Whereas the Army Man sequence was the first thing that we produced. The chase sequence was the last. And it was that way kind of on purpose because we knew it was going to be huge.
Supervising Technical Director Bill Reeves.
We had to create 6 city blocks of model, and we used various techniques to make that problem be a little bit more tractable. We designed about 20 different houses. Bill Cohn did a lot of the design work, and Lauren Carpenter did most of the technical creation of that stuff. And so the houses were, about 20 different varieties,
but they're very simple
paintings.
models,
Oh yeah,
right?
Oh yeah.
It's just like a little box, really, with a roof.
And there's texture maps painted on them. I mean, a lot of the slat work.
Yeah,
and
all the detail is just a painting.
Yeah, right.
There's like 20 different styles, but then we would tweak colors on them, so we had
color.
40 different styles,
Right,
really. And sometimes we would turn them.
But I think what makes people stop and gasp when they see the scene is the degree of dimension as you're traveling through the neighborhood. And I think in large part it's created by the trees and the light coming through them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the trees, we had about 10 or 12 different trees. We could make each one of those be any different size we want, and we could play with, we could rotate them around and they would look different. But it was a huge challenge to sort of orchestrate this whole thing. I want to point out Evan Osby did a lot of the work and just sort of, laying out the world and building a system so we could mix and match all these different parameters and actually control it. Because every shot was different, or every chunk of shots. There were 267 shots in the chase.
But what also was a great fundamental idea for the chase sequence is that it was overcoming, just like the movie, but in this chase sequence, one had to overcome one obstacle after another. Yeah. And every time the stakes got higher in terms of what it would take to catch up with that moving van. The goal remained the same.
And the sacrifices got bigger.
That's right.
But the thing that, from the day we had the treatment and we thought of this idea, I was so jazzed, was the miscommunication that you've built with these toys in Andy's room, that everything Woody does to save Buzz looks like something bad that he's doing, and the toys try to stop him. I loved that ironic twist on that.
I think we had a big discussion about make sure we don't think the dog is killed off here.
That's right. Have to ensure that no animals were injured in the course of making this movie. And the other thing that's great is the audience never tires of seeing Mr. Potato's Head's parts get whacked off.
That's great.
You can bang and smash Mr. Potato Head as often as you want, and every time they love it.
I think poor Tom Hanks told me so many times, he goes, I feel like I'm screaming through the whole movie. Are you sure it's not going to come off like that? But it really doesn't.
Now let's catch up to that truck.
Turbo.
Is that like the shortest shot in the movie?
It's amazing how people read that turbo, and it's on for just a couple frames.
Yes.
Again, great technical effort on the technical director's part, plus the great effort of our sound designer, Gary Rydstrom, to make this chase just work so incredibly well with the different sounds and noises that you hear in the neighborhood.
I was very inspired early on, before we started this movie, with a Nissan 300ZX ad that Ridley Scott did for the Super Bowl.
Right.
Mm-hmm. And it was so intense, the cutting and stuff. And I said, this is what it should be about. And we would describe it to people saying, the scale speed of remote-controlled cars is like 70, 80 miles an hour. So imagine being on top of a car, going 70 or 80 miles an hour, and trying to climb onto a 10-story building on wheels.
Right.
And what I love about it is it made Slinky so heroic. It's so heroic, the more danger that you added to it.
Of course, the famous Hakuna Matata cutback.
When we were talking to Randy about recording something, doing a piece of music like that, he goes, no, you know what they'd be listening to? Is they'd be listening to something like Lion King or something like that.
This is again, with the whole battery setups we've had, it's great to have bring it back again. It made complete sense. Hey, the batteries are dying after all this. Now this is the point where everybody in the theater, we knew everybody was. Most of the smart people were going, they're going to light the rocket. They're going to light the rocket.
I know it. They're going to light the rocket. Everybody's going to light the rocket. And we actually, originally just had them light the rocket.
Right.
And it absolutely, drove us crazy, the predictability of it. So we said, let's just play into it.
Right.
Let's just put one match, one rocket, one fuse, and
one car.
One car. And the wonderful, moan that happens in the audience.
It was the best response in the whole movie, was that.
Yeah. We were so excited when we showed this for the first time with an audience. They just
definitely pulled it off.
Because at this point in time, you would stop the movie and say, what happens next?
And we actually...
And people, wouldn't be able to tell. So once this rocket goes off, I wanted it to have this massive explosion and they're sort of out of control. I mean, they're not sort of, they're massively out of control. we always thought about what would it be like, to be on something going this fast, and we thought of those old NASA shots of the G-forces and what the face does with the G-forces. And Doug Sweetland, the animator, he took, and this is the one that blew us away more than any other shot in the film, is to what he did with that Woody model in the face.
I modeled Woody, and I couldn't believe when I saw this in dailies, like here, that Woody could do this. Woody can't do this, and Doug somehow found a way to tweak that face.
My favorite shot is technically the movie. This is it looks so real.
Yes.
Yeah.
Going straight up, looking straight down at the smoke trail.
Yep. And Not Today was actually a callback to originally the film opened with the Buzz Lightyear cartoon.
Right.
And that was the payoff.
And it was like
line
a Bond
from
film.
that.
You came in on the climax of the episode, and he said, "Not today." He burst open his wings and got out of his predicament.
But here's the real payoff line.
This is falling with style.
And we actually had a different line there.
Right.
And then it was animated, it was finished, and in dailies, you said, no, you know what he should say is...
Yeah, this is falling with style.
Right.
Which it makes Buzz seem very clever, like he remembered that line even though he wasn't listening at the moment that was said in the beginning of the film.
I think it gets people...
I love the way this next shot is composed when Andy picks him up and grabs him.
Well, look at...
And they wink to each other just at the right moment so that it's not... They never let on to Andy that they're alive.
That was the late edition as well.
That's right.
The wink.
And then a marvelous piece of transitional music by Randy.
That's not a real set.
Absolutely. It's like... It's great.
Painting. Remember, Ash was very frustrated with that scene. He did a mock one of Andy picking up the tree and hitting Mom over the head with it.
Frankincense, this is myrrh.
This is a vestige of an old... we had a karaoke gag.
Karaoke Christmas party.
Yeah, they had a pop-up Christmas book with a tree up, and then Buzz was actually singing karaoke using Mr. Spell to read off
the weather
of.
outside
Yeah.
is frightful.
I don't know why that got cut, because it's actually pretty funny.
Get another dinosaur. Like a
I remember writing that line in the sound booth while we had Wallace Shawn on his last.
Well, it's so great because it's completely... The entire room has changed because of the relationship of Buzz and Woody.
That's
they're
right.
bonded now. It's a subtle thing that everybody's like thinking the opposite. They're welcoming the new toys.
Right, and it's affected the whole world.
And even the decor of the room, isn't it now a mixture of cowboy and western?
Yeah, if
we
you
see
look
it
at
right
it,
here.
it's like
cowboy in space.
Cowboy in space.
Design.
Everything's together.
One of our story artists, Jill Colton, actually, in passing, was when we were trying to think of what Andy would get for a final toy. She said, sort of throw it out. What about a puppy?
Uh-huh.
And it was like,
a
puppy.
That's
yes,
right.
That's what they should get.
Wow, a puppy!
When we started Toy Story, I think the big goal for us was to do a character movie, was to have a film that had a good story, but characters that you could just really memorable and you feel for, that would make you laugh, to have the main characters funny, not just the comic sidekicks, but also that you really felt for and had a lot of heart. And that was the thing that we started out with from the beginning. I knew that this film would look different than anything anybody had seen, but it was to just sweep them away with great story and characters. I'm really proud of that.
Second to how great the story was, I think the other thing we were aiming for with this film was knowing that we were making the first computer animated feature film ever, was to really set a high level of quality consistently throughout the film in terms of how the film would look and how all the elements of music and art direction and animation would all fit together to make the film as high quality as we could.
I was really surprised that I was asked to work on a computer animated feature film when I had zero experience in computer animation whatsoever. I had to stop at the beginning of the production and say, am I going to learn everything about computers, or am I going to concentrate on the goals that John and I agree on? And we concentrated on supporting the story and the characters. And by virtue of doing that, the computer kind of downplayed itself, through the story.
Animation-wise, it was great to have the chance to have a story with a character with subtext and an arc, and to be able to try to, and this was the aim of the animation, to have people forget that this is computer animation, that all they care about is the character, and they're relating to this person, a real person, to them. And I think, thanks to the great animators that worked on the film, we succeeded.
The film was a great opportunity for me to work with some amazingly talented people, John, Ralph, and just everybody, to come together as a team and to do the first fully computer animated film. It's a culmination of many, many years of personally in my life, and I know the other people on the team to do this, and it was, it's just, I'm just so proud of being part of the whole mix.
What I think was probably one of the most challenging things about making Toy Story was the fact that no one had ever done this before. No one had ever made a feature-length computer animated film. And what I think we worked really hard at trying to do was getting people that were the best at what they did. We like to say that we had more PhDs working on our film than in any other film crew that we knew of. And I think the biggest challenge is for Ralph Guggenheim and myself as producers was to try to assemble a crew that would kind of face up to the challenge of what it would take to do something that no one had ever done before.
Yeah, it's funny. We were a really small group of people that made it, and we're all predominantly pretty young. And somebody compared us once to sort of the guys at NASA that put the man on the moon. It's like we were all too young and stupid to realize what we were doing is impossible. and from story all the way to technically making this movie. And I'm glad we were young and ignorant and stupid because we didn't let that stop us. And
knowing what we know now,
I know
we'd never want to do it again.
It's impossible. Kids, don't try this at home.
I always tell people that it's like, what we did, we just made what we thought was fun that we'd like to watch ourselves. We just made it for ourselves.
Yeah,
we
did. I mean, that's why there's so many homages to every great movie that we've ever
so
loved.
Unabashedly put them in.
Yeah. Right.
But even more importantly, we've all worked together for a long time. Certainly the core group that started this film, and we all were possessed with the same dream that we wanted to realize. And I think it was holding that dream in front of us the whole time that we were making the film is what kept it going, and what allowed us to be crazy enough to put all the time and effort into it, and allowed us to succeed at it.
I love you, man.